In this week's episode of The Happy Psychic, I'm joined by Ben Franklin. Now, Ben is a psychic medium and a life purpose coach. And not only does he do evidential mediumship, where he's bringing through evidence of people's loved ones that have passed on, but he also brings through a sense of peace and often relief, I would say, when he's working with people and helping them close off things that maybe were left unresolved in the earth plane. So, Ben, it is brilliant to have you on.
Thank you, Gemma. Great to be here.
It is very good to have you here. Very, very good to have you here. So this week we're really wanting to talk about, what makes a good medium. And that could be applicable for you if you are thinking of going to see a medium, or you're trying to find yourself a new medium, perhaps to give you some, spiritual guidance or help around your life purpose, perhaps like what Ben does, or if you're wanting to connect with somebody on the other side. But also likewise, if you're on your development journey as well yourself, there might be some traits that you could benefit from embodying more. None of us are perfect at the end of the day, but there could definitely be things that you could embody more possibly on your journey to help enhance not just your mediumship skills and your gift, but enhance the information that you bring through for people, and also enhance how you're perceived by the outer world as well, and help you draw some customers in. So we're definitely going to talk about that. So I imagine that we're going to be able to draw a lot on our own experiences, and also those from other people that we've observed as well on their journeys. Not that we're perfect. No. We're not. I'm certainly not. Definitely not. But, there is a massive learning curve, I think. And I can't imagine that I will ever stop learning on this journey, because I learn something new every day.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I found really, really hard was finding the right person to go to. So, and I have to put myself in the position of someone looking for a medium before looking at the learning and the teaching, and they have to feel right. So I've sort of, had readings from people and thought, it's not right. The energy's wrong. And the key word that I've learned really is about having empathy. If there isn't that to start with, or the kindness, there's no relationship, and you can't really believe, or your energy is not going to be shared equally. So that's always the starting point for me. And when I'm sort of helping others develop, that would be the place to start, one of the pillars really to begin with. Because if you can't show empathy, you can't be kind, maybe it's the wrong person.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? There's a few people out in the world that I have seen that are operating as mediums, and they are very, I'm not sure how they would be in a one-to-one setting, but certainly how my perception would pick them up. They're not particularly nurturing or kind and considerate, or they don't come across like that. They come across as being quite harsh. But I guess as well, that's the joy of life as well, isn't it? That everybody will be drawn to something different. But I wouldn't be able to go and sit for a person like that. There was a lady that I had been to before for a reading, because I've seen a few different mediums like over my lifetime. And for anybody that doesn't know, like, I wasn't always fully aware that I was a medium. I was always very intuitive, but I wasn't always fully aware that I was a medium and that I was clairvoyant. But there's a particular lady that I can remember seeing at one stage, and the way that she spoke during the reading the information didn't really make sense to me, because she was trying to build a story around it rather than just giving me the information. She was making like lots of assumptions and stuff, and I hadn't really realized it at the time. It was more in hindsight, and now that I've developed myself. But listening to her and the story that she was telling didn't resonate with me at the time. However, some of the information that she did give me was right, but the story that she had given me was wrong, because she had drawn a lot of conclusions and made a lot of assumptions. And I would say that is a very natural feeling for us as people, is to join the dots. We really want to join the dots, but that's definitely one thing that I have learned as a medium. And I really try to, not to drill into people. I'm not, it's not it's not an authoritarian, but I would definitely encourage people to try not to join the dots, as tempting as it might be. Just because you have been given two bits of information that seem like they might connect, or that the story might be a particular way, you have to resist the urge to draw that conclusion, because you could get it completely wrong. And I speak from experience when there's times that I have done that to my detriment, where I have made assumptions and the person has looked at me blankly, and it has come to light that the story that I created in my head from the dots that I have joined weren't accurate. So definitely important to listen to the information and take it all in, and be able to give, if you're on a mediumship journey yourself, or you're developing, be able to give the information, but don't build that story. So if somebody is giving you too much of a story and you're confused, then that could be why.
Completely agree with you. I mean, an example I had, God, this is probably my first ever visit to like a psychic fair. And I thought, I wanted to see, because I didn't really understand what I could do. This is probably when I must have been at 18. Even though I was very intuitive, I knew something different. I'd never had a reading and never explored that path. So I found this lady, sat down, and it was very uncomfortable, because honestly, she was doing very similar to what you've just said, giving me a whole story, but I couldn't place any of it. And so me, there was these big question marks. Well, what does this mean? And I was very disappointed. And in fact, I left that person thinking, I don't believe her, which is not right. You should have at least get something. So I actually went round to another one, which is, I wouldn't recommend doing that, because it's like a, contradiction. But actually this other person was amazing. Gave me a lot of evidence, a lot of things that I just hadn't shared with anyone. And I just then just relaxed into it and went with it, but just really did question maybe the morals as well. If you're not delivering an honest message, then don't deliver it at all, because you just need to be able to build that energy with the person you're doing the reading for.
Yeah. And that's actually another thing you said about delivering an honest message. Being honest is really, really important. And, so I'm very much of the school where, like, I shouldn't dilute anything that Spirit give me. And it is my belief that, if Spirit gives us something that is meant to be delivered, and that sometimes does mean delivering harsh messages as well. But that is my school of thought, really, that if it's given to me, then I need to be giving it to that person. So that comes across within me being honest, maybe too honest on occasion, people might feel, but also, not trying to be too soft with people either, because sometimes they need to hear the message. And I just think that whenever we're honest, and it sort of emanates through our whole life, whenever we take the approach to being honest with everything, not even with the spirit communication, but just, being a genuine person, I guess, I think that makes it a lot easier for people to buy into us, but for us to buy into ourselves.
I mean, one thing I've had to learn to do is, if I'm connecting with a loved one in spirit and they are quite brusque and quite rude, maybe swear and, use words that I wouldn't use. And before I would have, softened it and maybe not said some words, because it's not stuff I would have said, but then the person that's wanting the reading's not understanding. And it's through that painful communication, thinking, oh, I'm going to have to just say it, spat it out. But once you start delivering what Spirit are telling you to say, the way they want you to say it, the light goes on, and they're suddenly like, I understand, I know who that is, I know what this is for. And it's just, that's when and I then get all the shivers and all the signs coming through, and I love that.
It's funny, actually, because whenever I've had like quite a few similar situations to that as well. And sometimes I find that the information comes through exaggerated because spirit are trying to make sure that I grasp the message in the first place. So I use the example of like, they'll say furious about somebody being furious when the person maybe wasn't furious, or maybe like, you know, a bit disheartened or a bit angry, but they weren't furious. So there's that. But then on the other side, it's hard to know when, we don't really know whenever they're being over exaggerating on something to make sure that we get the message, or whenever it's actual, like this is how it happened. You know, it actually was as severe as this. So I always just stick with, just give it how they give it to me. And then that is the end of it. That would be the message then delivered. So, but I love it. I absolutely love the journey. You know, the one thing actually as well that I think is really important for people is to not be judgmental. I think the amount of things, whether you're giving the message to somebody or whether you're receiving the message, I would try to always assume that if the message is coming from a medium, that it is coming from a good place, or it's coming from spirit, it's coming from a good place and a place of love. It's not coming from a place where it's to hurt you or harm you or scare you in any way. It's always to either prepare us, I think, or to help us in some regard. But likewise, when you're given the message as well, you don't know always what information is going to come out. So it might be that you've uncovered an affair or a secret love child or something like that. And it's being able to be non-judgmental about that, first of all, and being able to deliver that message with tact. But likewise, if you're the recipient of it, understanding that, okay, maybe if this doesn't make sense to you now, maybe it will make sense. And don't feel that you can't ask additional questions to clarify the information, but maybe that will come to light at a later stage. So I think it's hard to be non-judgmental because we're naturally that way inclined as human. We're socially conditioned to be non-judgmental, but it's definitely an important trait. Certainly as a medium, I would say it might not come into play quite as much whenever you're receiving the message, but definitely when you're delivering it, because you just never know what you're going to uncover.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I have learned is to get out of the way. So I used to always get in the way of what I should be delivering. And then that really distorts the message because you're making the assumptions again or making a judgment, which is not our job. Our job is just to deliver the message and enable the sitter just to move on or even have closure. It's all about them being able to move forward. And it just makes me think of one. It was a really difficult message I delivered, but it was more to do with a secret she was keeping. And I knew I was being shown an image of a grandmother who I was connected with, but she was holding this baby. And I was like, where's this baby come from? I couldn't place it. But I just then had to say, she's not alone. She's with the baby. She wants you to know she's looking after your baby. And my client just broke down, but she needed to know that, but she hadn't told a soul. Basically, she'd lost the child and didn't tell anyone. And it was just so emotional. That's the other thing, is about holding your emotions back, because I'm quite an emotional person. And it's like, okay, I need to just take a breath and step back, because it's like, you feel it too. And I'm sure that's the same for you, because you're quite sensitive.
There's been a couple of times when actually I have cried with a client where the information has been so profound that has been coming through. But I try to keep like that emotional distance where you're sort of involved and you're giving support, but you're impartial, because it can be, whenever you're doing readings back to back or you're helping people in this sort of way, it can really weigh you down and burden you whenever you're actually working on doing this sort of work, and it can lower your vibration. It can make it hard to connect. It can really sit with you for a long time. So I try not to get too involved, but sometimes there's information that comes through that sometimes makes me well up just because it's so emotional and it's so touching. But also when it's the connection, like if you're connected to someone in spirit and they're putting their emotions and everything onto you, that's very, very hard to to hold back on and to not let those tears well up. And so yeah, it does happen. It does happen. So I guess it's nice for the person who's maybe receiving the reading to feel like, okay, well, at least I'm not, sitting having a reading done from a robot. This person has emotions and everything themselves. But like likewise, if you're learning to develop, or you're on your development journey, or maybe you're a medium and you're wanting to improve, definitely learning how to not get so emotionally involved in those situations is important, because we have to, like, as mediums and coaches, we have to learn to let people go through that themselves. We are the channel, we are the message giver, the message giver. We can't interfere too much. That is their own journey, and it's not up to us to dictate or guide or try and remove the burdens from them. And I think that so many of us are like fixer-uppers, that we want to help and we want to, like, we really want to fix this person, help them, but it's their own journey. It's likewise if you're delivering information to somebody and they don't want to hear it, or they're not in the right place to hear it. It could be that you're just planting the seed at the minute, but it's up to them to figure out the path forward.
That's
really.
it, exactly. So I'm just going to say something. I'm really distracted because your aura is this massive. So it's slightly off topic, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm really distracted. But there's a lot of bright color? White coming around you, and then there's green, and I'm like, okay, I know where that's coming from.
That's nice. That's the green.
Your heart. That's all about your heart and your connection with others. It's it's the love.
Okay.
That's really positive.
It's funny because every week or every couple of weeks I've got some sort of emotion coming to the surface here. I know that obviously, I've been on my healing journey for a while, and I keep getting stuff coming up to the surface. And a few weeks ago I was crying at the Lion King. It started with just, I was feeling really, really drawn to animals. And I'd seen something on TikTok and it was a giraffe and an elephant. And all I'm thinking is, like, I want to go on safari. I want to be with the animals. And then all of a sudden I thought, I'm going to watch The Lion King. And I mean, it was just the opening song and I was sitting in floods of tears. So yeah, but I guess that's another thing to look for, is like a medium who has been on their healing journey as well. Or if you are developing as a medium, focus on your healing, because that is really going to enhance the connection you have with spirit, but also with the people that you're reading for as well.
Yeah, completely agree with you. One of the best things I did was go down the healing route, and I went in with angelic Reiki, and that was it was really helpful to my connection. It also helped me learn to work with angels as well as, spirits. So it was a different sort of mode, but it was great. I love it because it has enhanced what I can do. But yeah, for anyone looking to develop their own abilities, just intrigued, I would always suggest starting at the healing part, because it will just enhance everything and allow any wounds, let's put it that way, wounds that haven't been healed. It will help with that and give you a sort of a clear path forward.
Yeah, I know. And I know plenty of mediums out there who definitely don't give me the perception that they've been on a healing journey. And I think we're always going to get that. But I always think to myself, wow, how profound could they be? How amazing could they be if they were to really focus on themselves and turn inwards and focus on their own healing as well?
And it's funny because I do see others and I'm like, oh, I would just want to reach out and say, right, you need to do this. That's not my job. But I can just see there's work they do need to do, not with their mediumship or psychic work. It's the healing they haven't done.
Yeah.
But they have to learn.
And I always would say that your mediumship, your connection with spirit, regardless of whether you classify yourself as a medium, even if you're sort of just interested in following like a bit of a spiritual path, your connection with spirit starts with the connection that you have to yourself. And what better way to connect to yourself than to focus on healing those parts of you that you probably don't even know you need healed? To be fair, I think that's the reality of it. Like, we think that we're fine and we think we're in a good place, but there's always something else to come up. Always something. Another thing as well that I thought was really good to point out is like going to somebody or recognizing if you are a medium yourself, like recognizing that you're fallible. You know, don't be looking for that perfect medium that's never wrong, or trying to be that medium that's never wrong, because we're
Oh,
human.
yeah.
Like it is just part of the human condition that we will not be right 100% of the time. So if somebody has got it wrong or can stand up and say, you know what, maybe I got it wrong, then maybe I misinterpreted the information, maybe it's not happening when I thought it was going to happen. I think having confidence for sure in your connection, the information that you receive is one thing, but don't be so arrogant that you think that you can never get
No,
it wrong.
completely agree with you, because it's not just that, but it might be a perception, that your own perception, your human or muggle, if you're Harry Potter fan. But your human
Yeah.
side will always be there, because you'll get a message or you'll see something and you think, right, okay, you just share it, but it might not actually be accurate. And I'm happy if
Yeah.
a client says to me, actually, that's not quite right, but they understand kind of where it's coming from. I'd rather learn that way,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think it's good to take that feedback.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I completely agree. And sometimes I find spirit can be a bit
Yeah,
ambiguous. I don't know if you find that, Ben, but I have definitely found them to be a bit ambiguous. And sometimes they'll say something that has like maybe a double entendre to it. And we take it one way and give the message when actually it was meant the other way. So it's definitely worth being
yeah,
aware of things like
yeah.
that.
There's one I've learned, and there's a pattern that comes with my guides, and they show me I'm being shown now, a lady, but has big breasts. And I know actually it's not a big breasted lady. It's a lady with a massive personality. So then, like, it's taken me a long time to get to that point. And
Yeah.
I'm saying, oh, she's very proud of her bust. And they're like, no, I don't know who that is. And then it's just trying to decipher that. But it's the way that they share it that I know now, I'll understand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like we have to invest in our development. So whether you're looking for a medium or you're looking to be the
Mm.
best medium that you can be, like this isn't something where, and I'm not saying that you can't just wake up some morning, you know, hearing spirit or seeing visions. That, you know, that does happen. However, in order to be able to really interpret that information well, you need to put the
Yes.
work in. And that means testing yourself, working with spirit, setting time aside all the time to develop, working with other people, doing practice readings, especially if you're at the start of
That's
your
it.
journey. You know, you can't necessarily go and, you know, start up charging straight away. You need to learn your craft, hone your skill set, sharpen those skills, sharpen that pencil, and, you know, learn, because the only way that you're going to learn is through getting the no's and through the people saying, well, that doesn't quite make sense. And then you're like, oh, this is the second time this has happened to me. Maybe this means
Yeah.
something different. And understanding the symbolism and everything that they're
Yeah.
giving
The
you.
symbolism is my weakest part. And even now they'll show me something, I'm like, oh no, you're going down that route. But it's just they do it on
Yeah.
purpose. Spirit are there trying to help me
Yeah.
develop, and I have to just take it on board. But you're right, it's an
Exactly.
ongoing journey for us, and you just have to go with it. You don't stop learning. You're always going to be learning something different, and they will push you down different avenues, just try it out.
Exactly. And I guess that's another thing. Like all mediums are not equal, but that's equal in terms of the sort of connection they have and the information that they're bringing through, but also the information that they're going to bring through for you in a reading. Like people don't really come to me for evidential mediumship to connect in with their departed loved one, although that sometimes happens as part of it. That's not really the bulk of my work. The bulk of my work comes from people who are wanting life
Mm.
guidance or wanting predictions or wanting to, you know, are at a crossroads and they want to make a decision. But likewise, somebody else might get something very, very different, and their messages and their readings might focus on something different. Like, I don't know, what do you find with yours, and where does yours tend to
It's
focus?
interesting because I've definitely been pushed down the mediumship route, which I wasn't before. And we've had conversations previously, and it was like I didn't think I was going to be focused on that, but that's where I'm being pushed now. But I like the
Yeah.
balance of doing the life purpose stuff because it really does help people. And I can still use the mediumship
Yeah.
in that because it's going to give them the guidance they need. But it's just interesting
Yeah.
because you can't set your path. It isn't set. You kind of, you're not in
No,
control of it
that's very
anymore.
true. Yeah. There was a period where I really thought that the mediumship wasn't for me. And I was really thinking like, I can see how it'll form part of my path, but I can't see that that's what I'll be
Yeah.
doing like permanently and full time. And oh boy, how wrong I was. But if the universe has a path for you, you will always
Yeah.
go down it, regardless of what you think and what your mindset might be. So definitely, without a doubt, that comes into it. It's actually quite an interesting thing, and I don't want to say that it's off topic, but if you're developing as a medium, it won't always just be about connecting people
No.
with their loved ones. Different things or different areas of specialism will come out in your readings. Like I get a lot of stuff around nutrition, medical stuff, fertility
Mm-hmm.
issues. I get a lot of harsh predictions actually for the future as well. If there's some bad news
Yeah.
to deliver, I tend to be delivering that to the person as well. And obviously that doesn't come out in all of the readings, but whenever I had one today and I'm like, oh, for goodness sake, do I really have to deliver this message? I don't want to, but I know that it's coming through for a reason. It's important for that
Yes.
person to hear. And often, it's the universe trying to prepare them. Do you find whenever you're doing readings with people that they tend to sort of come, I suppose, have like a bit of a specialism in terms of what spirit wants you to cover
It's
with that
interesting.
person,
There's a
or
pattern. So I'll suddenly get an influx of people that have not, situations will be different, but a similar pattern. They're going through trauma or something like that. And at the moment,
yeah,
the pattern is people that have gone through trauma in life, and they're trying to move forward, trying to heal and find their own path. And that's
yeah,
very draining actually on me as a reader, because it's the energy required for that, because I'm combining the healing with it,
yeah.
which isn't always needed, but at the moment that's the pattern.
Yeah, I often find as well that when people are coming along, they're sort of coming, and like if they come with trauma, I find traumas, like sometimes they're big, big traumas, sometimes they're little traumas, but whenever spirit throw that at me as well, it can be quite challenging to deliver that information. So you definitely need to be at a stage where you have the
Oh
confidence in the
yeah.
information that you're getting from spirit, because some of the information that you will get could be very, very
Yeah.
delicate in nature. And you could be thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, if I mention this to this person, they're going to crumble, or they're going to think that I'm just ridiculous. I'm going to cause a lot of embarrassment if I talk about this. So you really need to have put the groundwork in, or be going to a medium that has put the groundwork in order for them to have the confidence, in order to trust the
That's
information
it.
that they're given, and know without a doubt that, you know what, this is very clear what I'm being given. I need to give it to the person.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. I had a reading. I talk about this one a lot. I don't know. This seemed to be one of the most profound ones for me, because it was an email reading, and it was a girl in the US, and she had been asking me when she was going to have a baby, and I was being told that it's not set to happen right now, and that there was a fertility issue, an undiagnosed fertility issue. And obviously, you're dealing in email. So first of all, it's like, okay, this is not the best way to be
Mm-hmm.
communicating something like this. This is a woman, I didn't know her. This was the first time she had had a reading from me. I think she had seen me on TikTok and had put put it into my thing, and come on through that way. And I was being told, obviously, there's an issue there. You're not going to have a baby, and it's not been diagnosed. And of course, she responded. First of all, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like I went over it in my head, and I was asking spirit to present it in different ways. I was so I knew that I needed to make sure that I was getting it right, because I was about to
Yeah.
shatter this woman's life. However, my guide was also telling me that this woman had an awareness of it as well, which sort of made me think, oh, okay, well, at least she's aware. And when I messaged her, she responded back, and she says, well, I wasn't really aware. we've been checked, I've had my bloods done, my partner's been checked, and there's no concern. And I said, so how long have you been trying? And she said, oh, 2 years. And I was like, okay, so you're aware that there is an issue. That made me feel a little bit better. Like, obviously this isn't like you've just started trying and it's not happened just yet. But she was also saying, well, another psychic had told me that it was going to happen within a month. Another had said within the next 3 months. They'd both seen it coming through soon. And as soon as she mentioned that again, I started to doubt myself, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like maybe I've got it wrong here, maybe. And I went back to my guide, and I'm like, okay, so is this definitely right? And one of the lessons that I've taken from that is that I should always take the information on the first thing. When Spirit tell me that is it, the information isn't going to change when I go back 5 days later, a day later. I need to have the confidence to trust what comes through in the first instance. But also whenever you're being told, well, so-and-so, Psychic Sally said this and Psychic Matt said this. And it's like having faith and confidence in your own work. And that's where it comes to, you need to put the groundwork in. Because actually what transpired was I was being adamant with her. This is what I'm being given. I wish I could give you something different, but this is it. And she went away, and it always had played on my mind, like what really came of that? Has she got pregnant? Has anything happened? And I had thought on a few times, to message her perhaps and ask her, which I thought, no, Gemma, that is completely selfish and inappropriate. You cannot do that. So I had to just live with the not knowing, which is another thing you definitely have to get good at. Living with that, not knowing the outcome of stuff, and just trust that you've given the information, you've delivered the message, and the universe will make sure that everything happens as it should. But I got an email one day randomly from her, and I had actually said to her in one of my replies that she would have more clarity within the next 6 months. And she actually emailed me. I'd forgotten that I'd give that bit, but when she emailed me back and she said, oh, well, it's been 6 months pretty much to the day that you give me this reading, and and she had just recovered, or she was recovering from surgery. She'd went in with an issue that was gastro, so stomach related, and it transpired that actually, I think it was her intestine or part of her bowel was fused on to her womb, and she had endometriosis, and something was then putting pressure on her fallopian tube, so she had a blocked fallopian tube. So there was all these things going on that she had no idea about. They didn't come about in her bloods because things needed a closer inspection. And honestly, I felt a sense of relief for me to know that actually I was accurate, and it helped reaffirm me. But then at the same sense, I'm like, oh my gosh, that poor woman has had to go through all of that. And then I had the realization, well, wow, how amazing would medicine be if we had the holistic sort of intuitives coming along and joining forces with Western medicine? How powerful could that be? But yeah, I know that was a pretty long-winded story, but it was so profound to me and give me a lot of confidence, but also it took a lot of confidence to deliver that message in the first place, because I could have quite easily shied away and said, oh no, I don't do fertility readings. But I read on everything. If no matter what people come to me with, and people do sometimes come and say, oh, do you read on this topic? Do you read on that topic? And I'm not, yeah, just whatever, as long as they're going to give me an answer, I'll do the reading for you.
Go with the flow.
Yeah, indeed. But no, there's some messages are definitely harder to deliver than others.
So it is quite nice sometimes to get one that's a bit more fun because it just gives you that the energy is very different. I think if you've had a run of not difficult is probably the wrong word, but when they're just a bit more draining, energetically draining, it is nice then suddenly to be able to deliver a message that's lighthearted and it's something positive, and then that just gives you that boost. Think, okay, it's worth it. That work is worth it.
So it's definitely good when you get the light-hearted, positive ones. And I always find Spirit has a really good sense of humour. However, there's sometimes they have too much of a sense of humour, and I'm still thinking to myself, oh God, please don't make me deliver that message. So I don't know. Do you have any instances like that you come up against?
Well,
or
for me, it's more they're trying to make me swear. and I hate it.
Yeah.
It's not that I hate swearing, because I do swear, but they will force me to do it, and I know they're just winding me up trying to like play,
Yeah.
but I quite like it in the end. I've just got used to it now. I'm like, okay, I'll just do it. Or delivering something rude
Yeah.
to me is rude.
That's what I was getting at, the rude stuff.
Like,
the rude stuff, because
just because
they're all spiritual doesn't mean that they can't be rude. And I can there's a couple of times whenever I've just thought to myself, what on earth, like there's been a couple of times, even just with my own life guidance, or I've maybe been having a conversation with my guide and we've talked about maybe a series that's on the television, and I thought, would I enjoy it? And then she said something and I've been like, oh, you can't believe you've just said that. And then I've watched the show and I've been like, I understand why you said that now. But I also had a girl asking me once about, I think I was telling her that there was this person coming onto her path, and a romantic encounter and this, that and the other, and she was asking me about the traits of the person, and I was being told he was hung like a horse. So you just have to just assume that the person has a sense of humor. If spirit are giving it to you, then I think it's highly unlikely that person is going to turn around and be uber offended that you've even said such a thing. But it does, I think, bring definitely a bit of a sense of humor.
That just made me think there was someone I was doing a message for last week, and she was actually asking about her love life because she's just not had much luck. And I said, well, and she hadn't mentioned this man. So I just said, right, this man that you're dating, I can't even say dating, it's the wrong word. So I just had to say it. The one you're sleeping with, it is just that. And she was like, how did you know? But like the message was actually, it is just there, enjoy it while it lasts, but he's not the one. But it was just funny that what I was being shown, I thought, I can't describe that.
Yeah. Honestly, spirits see everything. They know everything. They're always with you, even if you don't feel their presence. They're always there. They're always watching. I had a girl actually not that long ago. She does come to me for readings quite regular anyway, and she's young. I think she's about 19, 20. And I was just talking to her mid-flow, and all of a sudden I was like, are you thinking of getting your nipple pierced? And she was like, oh, how did you know? But yeah, they know everything. So I think that, like, from the really sad stuff to, controlling our emotions, to then controlling our laughter and our shock and our, like, oh my God, did you say that? Did you really say that? Like, it can be such a challenge, such a roller coaster ride, because we literally go from one extreme to the other. Like, I sometimes have clients that are leaving in tears, and, the trauma and the healing that has happened, and that's, reading, whether it's been that they've connected to a loved one or whether it's just been through their own emotions and traumas that have come up. But then I have people who are leaving like howling with laughter and are like, oh my gosh, that was the best reading ever. That was so hilarious. So it's definitely like a bit of a mixture. It
just made me think of another situation. So I was delivering, it was a client in America, and I was being shown this man in a hospital bed, and it was very, very sad. He was, so they were about to turn off the machines, and I was seeing the family, but that wasn't the message. It was all to do with his mum, which was her sister, who was like just taking over, and all I could hear was her talking. And I was like, right, I'm just going to describe how you're feeling. She's like, what do you mean? I said, right, I just need to explain your sister. You're really frustrated with your sister because of that situation and how delicate it was. But her way of the sister's way of coping was to be over the top and, just not saying anything, not accepting the sadness. But that was just an interesting way of like having to share the message.
It's funny. Sometimes I think whenever I'm connected into different spirits, and this is why I prefer how I work with my guide for most of the time, because everybody will
Yes.
work differently as well. You know, regardless of who you go and see as a medium, don't make the assumption that all mediums are equal
No.
and will work the same. You know, everybody works different.
And one piece of advice that anyone looking to go into mediumship or develop their psychic side would be go and see them, like performing,
Yeah.
because everyone is different. And I've made a point of doing that over the past few months in readiness for me doing that, going on stage. And it's just quite
Yeah.
interesting to see how they all have a different process. Some are more traditional, which isn't me. You won't get me
Yeah.
going to a spiritualist church. That's just not my way of working. But it's just about investigating and seeing and sort of feeling what's right for you. Because there are some amazing people
Yeah.
out there. And if you just reach out, actually, that's how I sort of come across you before, wasn't it? You know, it's just reaching out and saying, how do you do that? And it's just, don't be scared and
Yeah.
don't be afraid. There are people that help you. And I've still got mentors now. And I think that's important. We have to keep learning.
Yeah, we definitely have to keep learning without a doubt. I always just love the journey because you never really know what's around the corner. And even as mediums, you know, regardless of whether you're sitting to have a reading done or you're trying to perform a reading for somebody else, just because the information is there doesn't mean that we're
Yeah.
going to get it. It doesn't mean that we're going to be given that information. We're not the ones that are in charge. Spirit are the ones that are in charge, and they really decide what we get and what we don't get. So just because the connection is there doesn't mean that you're going to be just given everything on a plate, because that's not how it works. They will dictate what needs to come through and what doesn't. And sorry, that was actually what I was going to say about before. So everybody works differently whenever it comes to being a medium. So in a lot of readings, I connect only with my guide. Sometimes I will have other people coming forward, but sometimes, you know, for the most part, I could do a reading for start to finish and it's all been with my guide. I've not connected to anybody else during that reading. I like that because I have a very, very strong connection with her. And I know whenever she gives me information, I understand what it means. I know the words that she uses and what she means by that. However, whenever I connect in with different people in spirit, it's not always as easy to know exactly what they're meaning, because they might use different words. They might have a different way of talking. They might show you symbolism in a different way, like you'd mentioned about that lady around the bed. You know, everybody works differently. Even spirit, even those in spirit, they work differently. So that's why I always encourage mediums to really develop that connection with one person or like your guide. But not everybody will work like that. And it's not going to be the best option for everybody to work like that, because if you are supposed to get up on stage and connect in with multiple different spirits and bring evidence through for, you know, all of these different people of their loved ones being in existence, then, you know, maybe connecting, you know, to your guide just all the time isn't going to be the right way. You know, but you definitely have to find your own way of working, but definitely don't assume that everybody works the same. You know, whether you're having a reading or giving a reading, everybody works differently. So, you know, two people won't even necessarily be giving you the same information through. You might go to one and have loads of evidence come through. You might go to another one and then it just is focused on future predictions, and you're coming away thinking, well, where's the evidence? There was no evidence there, but the evidence will come in
That's
time.
it. Yeah, exactly. But they're two very different styles of messages, but there's no wrong or right to either.
Yeah. I think sometimes oh, she's a medium, I'll go, or he's a medium, I'll go, and they'll think that it's like every other reading that they've had throughout their life. But I think that you mentioned there about, you know, some people are very traditional in their approach. You talked about the spiritualist church. And I don't want to say that all churches are going to be the same, but definitely I found the spiritualist church to be very traditional, very restrictive. Whereas because I didn't really form an allegiance with them, I maybe did at the start. But then with COVID and everything else, you know, you sort of just have to muddle through as best you can. And I found my own path. And actually, probably the way that I work and the information that I bring through half the time would be frowned upon I would expect, by the spiritualist church. But I also can't imagine like the next generation, the younger generation, going into a
No.
spiritualist church and thinking, yes, this is where I want to be. And that's whether you're going to develop as a medium or you're going to actually sit and have a reading done. Because that was one of the reasons actually that I set up the Mediumship Academy as well, was to try and give something, create something, some sort of learning system that was going to be accessible for
Yeah.
people, that isn't in the restrictive fashion of the church, and that it encourages people to find their own way of working as well. I think if I was to stand on the podium and give a reading in the spiritualist church, they'd be chasing me out. You
Me
can't say
too.
that. You can't use that. You can't do that. You can't. And I'd just be, no, this isn't for me. So in a way, like TikTok and Instagram and all of these things has really given people this ability to have this platform and to do things how they want to do. It's funny actually, because this is another thing with assumptions. So there's people, I often hear it saying, well, you're a medium, you're not supposed to give bad information, you're not supposed to give anything negative, you're not supposed to, but I don't know where this come from. I don't know where this stemmed from, where it should all be love and light. And yes, it should be uplifting, but life isn't all sunshine and lollipops either.
So I think, historically, I know I've experienced it myself. I've been told, oh, you shouldn't be delivering, a negative message. And I'm like, well, I'm receiving that message to deliver, And I think this is where modern mediumship comes from. It's evolving, it's changing. And I think that's not actually us leading that spirit, because they want it to change and they don't want us to be doing it how it was done 40 years ago. It's very different,
Yeah. And that's another thing. Like whenever I had first started out down my path, everybody was saying to me, no, you're in charge, not them, you're in charge. And I'm like, no, they're in charge, not me. They're in charge. And everybody will be different. If you're not comfortable with that and you don't want it ruling your life, then that's fine. But I would say that my life and my mediumship and everything around that has been greatly enhanced by letting spirit dictate to me what was happening and dictate to me the messages that are being delivered. And I always say as well, when it's come to, if you're delivering a message that might be perceived as negative, you don't know how it's actually going to be received by that person. You don't know that person. This might be the first time that you've met them. They could be sat on the other end of an email for all I know. But if spirit has given you that message, then know that person either needs to hear that or can handle that information. So that's why I just decided, you know what, I'm handing over to them and I'm going to place my full trust in them. So if information needs to be delivered, I'm going to trust that that they're giving me it for that purpose and I'm going to deliver it. Even if I can't understand the reason behind it, I'll always deliver the message.
It's not for us to understand, is it?
Exactly. And it does get hard, especially if you're delivering a message to the general population and then you've got people saying, well, you shouldn't be delivering that to us. And, why would you even deliver that? And I'm like, well, because I'm asked to, and I know that there will be a purpose behind it and there will be a reason why, even if I can't understand it. So, but everybody needs to figure out their own way of working, I think. And I think that whenever you're authentic in yourself, it'll really shine through. And as long as you're coming from a place that is good intentioned and you want to help, not hinder, because I think that it can definitely be used in a negative way. As long as you're using it for the right reasons and you want to flourish and you're putting the effort in, your life will be amazing.
Yes. You also have to dedicate. You have to dedicate your time and space to do the work. It's not something you can just do like by clicking your fingers. It's not just going to happen. So it's about giving that time, and it just goes from there, just evolves.
Yeah, and without a doubt. And also, even I know that a lot of this information has been, more focused on the, developing mediums and those mediums that are really wanting to maybe either get into it or wanting to really take themselves to the next level. But there's so much good stuff in here as well for anybody that is just interested in coming along and having a reading or, a bit of like a behind the scenes peek at how it all works, because we all have this ability. So just because you're not pursuing that now doesn't mean that something might something might happen on your path at a later date where you're thinking, you know what, I'm gonna go down that path. I'm gonna start exploring this
That's
and
it.
seeing if
I've
I can
got
develop.
people that I work with at the moment, just helping them to develop, and they don't really want to go into career of mediumship, which is fine. They're doing it because they want to develop their intuition and their understanding of people. One of them's a counsellor. So it's interesting because counselling and I do think psychic mediumship are very much aligned but slightly different. Do you know what I mean? But she's doing
Yeah.
it because she wants to be able to feel the energy and see what's going on
Yeah.
behind the scenes without, because if you've got a client that's not giving you the answers, she can then tap into spirit and then dig a bit
Yeah.
deeper. So it's interesting. There's all these
It's funny
tools.
because, yeah, I actually had a reading with, I think she was either a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I can't remember, but she was receiving a reading from me. And that was what I was seeing for her in her future, was her using a spiritual gift alongside her sort of medical training and being able to really help people, like really, really help people. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful to see how we're all using that as part of our careers in whatever way. But also, you might go into it thinking, well, I'm not going to be doing that. That's not my career. I don't want to be doing that. I'm not going to pursue that. But you might not be aware, but maybe that's what spirit have in mind for you.
You might not have a choice.
Maybe 5 years down the line, you'll be having a TikTok channel doing card readings for people. You can book me by clicking the link in my bio. You'd never know. Yeah, but there's so much that can be gained from just developing our intuition, I think. Even if we're not intending to do it for a living, just being able to do it, I
definitely
think
as well. If you're a nosy person, I'm quite nosy, and that's why I'm definitely in the right role. If you're just a nosy person and want to know more about people, then definitely go and learn.
Yeah, definitely. The only thing is, it has got me into trouble a few times where I've done that and I've thought, oh, well, this is definitely going to happen. And then it's not happened. I've been sort of really confused, but I've seen that spirit will definitely tell me to keep my nose out whenever I'm getting a bit too overzealous in terms of looking in on people that I shouldn't be. So... yeah, so there you go. Well, honestly, Ben, it has been brilliant having you on here.
You.
How can people find you online?
My website, benfranklinmedium.com. I am on TikTok and Facebook. But yeah, website first, then you can find me.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're able to, please rate the show or leave feedback on your chosen podcast player. You can also visit the podcast website. Simply head across to thehappypsychic.show, and you can also find me on the socials by searching for @GemmaLonsdale Guru.